Rüschlikon, una pequeña aldea en las afueras de Zúrich y una de las comunidades más ricas de Suiza. Los precios de los bienes raíces están en auge, el desempleo prácticamente no existe y los problemas sociales son pocos y raros, o como dice el alcalde,
Rüschlikon is a wealthy community, but they say, of course, you can be rich, but please don't show it.
uno de los 5.300 habitantes de Rüschlikon es Ivan Glasenberg, director general de la gigantesca empresa de materia prima Glencore. El año pasado su empresa salió a la bolsa, lo que le hizo ganar más de 8.800 millones de dólares estadounidenses de la noche a la mañana.
The next thing was surprising because we got a phone call from the tax office of the canton. They said, please be prepared to have a bank account that can accept 360 million of Swiss francs.
Los ingresos fiscales tan solo de Ivan Glasenberg produjeron un superávit de más de 50 millones de francos suizos, así que el alcalde decidió reducir los impuestos.
We proposed to reduce by 7%.
Pero comenzaron los problemas. Ellos son Peter Kadisch y su esposa Anna Maria.
Ja, die Gemeinde wollte die Steuern 7% senken und wir haben dann einen Vorschlag gemacht, nur 5% zu senken. Also es ist eigentlich eine kleine Nuance. Es sind doch allerdings dann, diese 2% sind doch 1 Million Schweizer Franken.
Ese millón de francos suizos se usaría para ayudar a comunidades pobres en África afectadas por las operaciones de Glencore.
Man wünschte, dass dieses Geld zurückgegeben wird, dass dieses Geld in die Entwicklungshilfe fließt, dieses Geld eigentlich dahin fließt, wo es erwirtschaftet wurde von den einzelnen Arbeitern im Rohstoffhandel.
De acuerdo con el sistema suizo de democracia directa, los habitantes se reunieron para una junta en el ayuntamiento.
That was a flux of people coming to our meeting room, and we said, okay, maybe our 280 seats that are available will not be enough.
Muchos se opusieron a la propuesta de Peter Kadisch. Algunos pensaron que era injusta para Ivan Glasenberg.
Ich finde das eine bodenlose Frechheit. Wir verurteilen da jemanden in dieser Gemeinde. Vor 2 Jahren hat man ihn aufgenommen. Man hat den Geldsäger gern angenommen. Und jetzt tut man ihn so an den Pranger stellen.
Cuando llegó la hora de votar, el resultado era obvio. Casi todos querían conservar el dinero en Rüschlikon.
The council had never to interfere or to defend our own proposal, so that were the people that took it to their own.
Eigentlich das Extremste war meiner Ansicht nach, dass die Leute, die hier leben, dass man zu wenig weiß, was auf dieser Welt passiert und dass man aber trotzdem sehr stark betroffen ist. Man ist ebenso betroffen wie auf der anderen Seite die Leute, die darunter leiden. Also wir leiden nicht, weil wir viel Geld bekommen, aber wir sind auch betroffen.
Esto es el cinturón de cobre en Zambia. Bajo la tierra están las reservas de cobre más grandes de África, un producto esencial para la economía global.
Glencore, under Glencore. Yes.
Hoy en día, prácticamente todas las minas de cobre de Zambia son propiedad de corporaciones multinacionales. En 10 años han extraído más de 29.000 millones de dólares estadounidenses de cobre.
As a country, as a nation, God has blessed us with such an abundant natural resource. Now, the paradox is that Zambia is ranked among the bottom 20 in terms of poverty, 20 poorest countries. We are wealthy, yet we are poor.
The problem is no longer so much one of absolute poverty. It's become one of inequality, and Zambia is really a case in point for this.
A lot of people think that we in the West have been extremely generous in the amount of foreign aid that we provide to the developing countries and particularly to Africa. Globally, our estimate is that the amount of money flowing out of developing countries is 10 times the amount of foreign aid flowing into developing countries.
Llegamos a Zambia para averiguar por qué este país, con su enorme riqueza de recursos naturales, está entre los más pobres del mundo. ¿Por qué el auge de los precios del cobre no ha reducido la pobreza? Esa misma pregunta se hicieron muchos zambios en las últimas elecciones.
Mr. Speaker.
En octubre de 2011, Guy Scott, quien antes amenazara con manifestarse contra las plantas de cobre si no pagaban sus impuestos, se convirtió en vicepresidente.
We're aware that Africa is losing more money from tax avoidance by foreign companies every year than it's gaining from aid from the countries from which these people come.
El vicepresidente Guy Scott nació en Zambia. Estudió economía en Cambridge y tiene un doctorado en ciencia cognitiva.
It seems peculiar that you're vice president in Zambia and you're white.
Well, white vice presidents occur from place to place, like United States of America has got one. And I don't think in the Caribbean it would be all that unusual. It's just a thing that's a bit unusual in Africa. But Africa's maybe changing. I'm a Zambian nationalist. Why not? What else would I be?
Well, a colonial farmer exploiting something?
No, I think colonial farmers don't have any votes anyway, even if I wanted to stand on their ticket. And there are very few farmers here, white farmers.
No, but you understand the question, I guess. I mean, it is from.
Yeah, normally a white politician in an African country will be representing white minority interests. That's not the case here. I'm regarded as pro-poor, pro-unemployed, the ordinary people of the earth.
Esta es la Bolsa de Metales de Londres, donde se determina el precio del cobre en el mercado mundial. Entre 2001 y 2008, el precio del cobre casi se ha cuadruplicado. A pesar de este auge, los inversionistas extranjeros prácticamente no pagan impuestos por sus ganancias en Zambia. Una razón podría ser el precio de transferencia.
Transfer pricing is an enormously damaging phenomenon right the way across Africa.
The name of the game is to shift your profits out of the high-tax countries, the onshore countries such as in Africa, where the profits are actually being made, and shift them artificially into low-tax countries, into tax havens where they won't be taxed or won't be taxed properly. The way that this is done is by multinational groups is that they have subsidiaries all around the world, and these subsidiaries trade with each other. And they can artificially manipulate the prices of these trades for bookkeeping purposes, for accounting purposes. The tax haven subsidiary will buy something cheaply and sell it on much more expensively, and between that gap there's a huge profit, but they won't be taxed in the tax haven.
Mucho del cobre zambio no se comercia en el mercado abierto. Es comprado y vendido internamente dentro de las mismas corporaciones multinacionales. En teoría, esto convierte a Suiza en uno de los principales importadores de cobre zambio.
Switzerland is a huge purchaser of copper out of Zambia, but that doesn't mean that the copper is shipped from Zambia to Switzerland. The documentation goes to Switzerland, but the copper goes all over the world.
A solo 30 minutos en auto desde Rujlikon está la sede de Glencore. propietaria de una de las mayores operaciones mineras en Zambia. Aquí es donde trabaja Ivan Glasenberg. Glasenberg es el director general de Glencore y es el dueño de 15% de sus acciones.
And on my right, Mr. Ivan Glasenberg, our esteemed CEO. It has been a very exciting period for the group.
Glencore es la empresa de comercio de materia prima más grande del mundo, con una facturación anual de más de $180 mil millones estadounidenses, más de 8 veces el Producto Nacional Bruto de Zambia. Glencore controla las minas de cobre de Mopani en Zambia con 73% de las acciones. Todo el cobre producido por Mopani es vendido internamente a Glencore, en Suiza. A pesar de ser tan grande, Glencore es prácticamente desconocido para el público. En 2011, los abogados de Glencore advirtieron a las organizaciones noticiosas del Reino Unido que los ejecutivos de Glencore son individuos extremadamente privados y que cualquier información sobre sus domicilios o sus vidas privadas podría representar un riesgo para la seguridad del Estado.
Your company is a major investor in the developing world. We believe developing countries need more investment, not less. Investment provides jobs, education, access to healthcare, and improved infrastructure. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars on goods and services, as well as running schools and hospitals at many of our operations. Without foreign investment, none of this would be possible.
Parte de las operaciones de Glencore en Zambia han sido suspendidas por las autoridades ambientales.
Captain Yika, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
El vicepresidente Guy Scott visitará la planta y nos invitó a acompañarlo. Los residentes se han quejado de que a sus hogares está llegando desde la planta una brisa que contiene ácido diluido.
This looks like something out of a bondage and discipline kit. If we carry on touring the mines like this, we'll get everything that we need for. No, just a minute. Vice President.
Obviously, the standards are pretty loose. On the excuse, of course, always that if you make us spend a lot of money on anti-pollution measures, then we won't have any to spend on making more money out of copper.
En la planta nos reunimos con el presidente de las Mopani Copper Mines. Cuando le preguntamos por la suspensión, parece perplejo.
Well, I don't know. We are good corporate citizens. We are open in our business. We are very frank when we deal with all outsiders, with all authorities that visit us. We open our books. We don't understand. In this particular case, the action by Zema was completely surprising. So we would like to find out why they took that action. We have challenged them on that issue, and we're expecting a response from them.
Tras la implantación de medidas de seguridad, se permitió reabrir la operación. No es la primera vez que la planta llama la atención de las autoridades zambias. En 2005, derrames de ácido de la planta contaminaron el agua potable en un distrito cercano. En 2008, hubo un accidente similar que envió al hospital a cientos de residentes.
Well, I mean, there were stages when people in towns were turning on their taps and blue water was running out that had been created by pumping sulfuric acid into the subsoil. And this was leaking into the town water supply and everyone was turning green, blue.
Gracias a un préstamo de $50 millones del Banco de Inversiones de la Unión Europea, Glencore duplicó la capacidad de producción en Mopani. La producción de cobre también emite altos volúmenes de dióxido de azufre y polvo. Las emisiones de azufre pueden causar enfermedades respiratorias y crear lluvia ácida que destruye la vegetación.
A lot of respiratory tract infection cases come from Cancoyo, especially when the emissions are too big.
La contaminación del aire es regulada por las pautas de la OMS y los límites establecidos por las autoridades zambias. Los niveles son medidos en 4 instalaciones de la planta. Las cifras son tomadas por funcionarios de Mopani y no son publicadas. De acuerdo con grupos ambientales y residentes, las cifras no exhibidas prueban que la contaminación excede por mucho los estándares nacionales e internacionales.
The air tests that have been done by themselves, but also by other independent companies, have showed that we have as much as 1,000 times more emission of undesirable impurities than required by WHO, the World Health Organization.
Le preguntamos al presidente de Mopani si es cierto que la contaminación ambiental por la planta de cobre excede por mucho los estándares de la OMS.
The reference point is the Zambia Environmental Management Agency, and we operate within the terms set by the Zambia Environmental Management Agency. And licenses of all our operations are within those terms. So the statement by the NGO, I cannot comment on it. I would suggest that, in fact, we refer them to the Zambia Environmental Management Agency.
So it's false. It's not 100-fold above the, sometimes 1,000-fold above the WHO standards in air pollution out there.
Well, what we're saying is that we operate within what the Zambia Environmental Management Agency stipulates, within the licenses that they stipulate, and we abide by those.
Tratamos de conseguir las cifras de las estaciones de medición directamente con Mopani y las autoridades zambias, pero no hubo resultados. Finalmente contactamos al jefe de comunicaciones de Glencore en Suiza.
The numbers that you collect, I know you have these measuring stations for pollution around Mufulira. Is it possible to get those numbers from you guys?
They're not public numbers.
Why not?
I mean, this is something, because they aren't. This is something that is between us and the environmental regulator. Yeah, in Zambia.
You know, I'm just asking about what are the emissions. You must have the most precise information.
I've answered that question several times.
No, you haven't answered. You said, okay, but then I'm a bit slow. What's the reply?
The reply is that we're capturing half. The data that you were asking about is not public data. That is the reply.
Para entender las prácticas empresariales de Glencore decidimos mirar al pasado. Glencore fue fundada en 1974 por el empresario estadounidense Mark Rich, y en un principio se llamó Mark Rich & Co. AG. Solicitamos una entrevista con Mark Rich, pero no recibimos respuesta. En vez de eso viajamos a Tampa, Florida, para hablar con Maurice Weinberg, un ex procurador de Nueva York. En 1983, él encabezó una investigación respecto a las prácticas tributarias de la empresa.
There was a big investigation the Justice Department was doing, and in the course of that investigation, 2 businessmen from Texas had pled guilty. And in the course of pleading guilty, they said, hey, there's something we can tell you about some guy named Mark Rich. And they explained to us that they had created with Mark Rich phony deals, making it appear that they had bought some foreign oil from one of Mark Rich's companies and then sold it to another company that turned out to be a Mark Rich company, and by that sold it at a loss, and that by doing that they had literally laundered, sent offshore close to $100 million in only about a 6 or 7 month period. You know, from a trial perspective, if we ever tried it, we had all we needed. During the course of the investigation, we had learned about a series of transactions that Mark Rich had orchestrated with Iran. He arranged for the Iranians to get weapons, basically, in exchange for oil. And so we indicted him for trading with the enemy.
La empresa y su director general Mark Rich fueron acusados de evasión fiscal, de fraude fiscal y de comerciar ilegalmente con Irán durante la crisis de los rehenes. Según Morris Weinberg, Rich y su abogado ofrecieron un pago único para que se retiraran los cargos.
Well, he came in the office. He's a big guy. He's a really big guy, Edward Bennett Williams. And everybody, all of my friends were all excited because here's the most famous lawyer in the country is coming in to meet me. And he comes in, he sits down, he puts his feet up on my desk, and we talked about baseball. And then eventually, he said, well, something to the effect of, can't we just get this resolved? We'll just pay some money and, it'll go away. I mean, and then he said something, I know you got a pretty good case here. I know you got a pretty good case, and I just want to, make it go away. And I said, he's going to have to plead guilty. He's going to have to plead guilty. And he says, what do you mean? I said, it means he has to plead guilty and he's going to go to jail. And I think I probably spelled it out like Jail, jail. And he said, woo. And he said, well, why? And I said, I said, well, look, it's the biggest tax fraud in the history of the United States. If we let him go, how are we ever going to do another case?
Las minas de cobre de Zambia fueron privatizadas y vendidas a los inversionistas extranjeros en el año 2000.
It is fair to say that of all the frauds that occurred in Zambia during President Chiluba's time, the privatization of ZCCM was one of the most significant.
El proceso de privatización nunca fue oficialmente investigado en cuanto a la corrupción, pero el presidente de esa época, Frederick Chiluba, fue enjuiciado por el Estado zambio por malversación de fondos en el Tribunal Superior de Londres en 2007. Michael Sullivan representó a Zambia en el caso contra Chiluba.
President Chiluba was found liable in damages to the Republic of Zambia in the sum of $46 million for conspiracy to defraud the Republic and for breach of fiduciary duty. A very living example concerns the purchase of extravagant shoes and suits from, in particular, one named Boutique Basile in Geneva. There was spent over $1.1 million, and the clothes which were purchased were found during the investigation into state corruption. I've seen them myself. There were 11 trunks. I mean, I have the list of what was found in the trunks, and you have 206 designer suits, 185 shirts, 36 jackets, 157 trousers, and 64 pairs of shoes, and 74 ties. Now, all these ties were designer ties, mainly coming from Switzerland and Italy. So there you have a graphic example of the nature and extent of the corruption.
Las ZCCM, las minas de cobre consolidadas de Zambia, fueron vendidas por un total de $627 millones estadounidenses. Tan solo el año pasado, las minas produjeron más de $6,000 millones estadounidenses de cobre. El presidente Chiluba murió en 2011. Francis Kaunda, quien encabezó las negociaciones, sigue viviendo en Zambia. En 2008 fue sentenciado a 2 años de prisión por corrupción relacionada con la privatización de la ZCCM. Durante medio año intentamos entrevistarlo.
So you would want a payment for the interview?
Yes, I would charge for it.
Cuando nos negamos a pagar, nuestra comunicación terminó.
Forget it.
I just want you to have the opportunity because we talked.
Forget it. You don't. What opportunity?
Can I please say something?
Sorry.
I would just.
Forget it.
Desde el principio, los inversionistas tuvieron la ventaja en las negociaciones de las ventas. Los precios del cobre habían disminuido sobremanera y el Estado estaba quedándose sin dinero. Su deuda con el Banco Mundial y el Fondo Monetario Internacional era tan grande que no podía conseguir nuevos préstamos. Zambia estaba entre la espada y la pared y no tuvo más remedio que vender.
The executive board were more and more nervous about that. So the board left me with no initiative but to get the money back and not to extend more credit to that country if we are not repaid or if we don't invent a scheme to be repaid.
The mines was the last great resource that the state held, and the bank and fund were very keen for the mines to be privatized. And so they made it a condition of a series of loans to Zambia and a series of debt relief initiatives that the mines be privatized.
Hello once again and welcome to privatization. Government appears to be committed.
We will ensure as government that not only do we keep the promises, but we work as responsibly as possible to ensure that we succeed.
So the IMF acted as effectively a gatekeeper to all donors, both the bank, the fund and all bilateral donors.
We were basically under the instructions of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund.
Effectively, Zambia made a decision that the country was in such a desperate situation with its very high debt that it should do anything it could to please the foreigners. Anything you need to do to keep the donors engaged and to an extent to attract investors should be done.
These were very, very painful moments because we were not given the opportunity to get the correct value of our assets.
Hoy en día, la privatización de las minas de cobre combinada con el auge en los precios ha revitalizado el sector minero. Pero a pesar del crecimiento económico, el desempleo continúa igual en gran medida. Con más de 64% de la población viviendo en pobreza extrema, Zambia está más desesperada que nunca por atraer inversiones extranjeras con la esperanza de que esto cree nuevos empleos.
Since we came to power, which is only 6 months ago, something like 150,000 people have been dumped on the jobs market. And we certainly haven't created 150,000 jobs in the 6 months that we've been in power. For the investment park. Is that right?
说这次代表团来主要是为了这个合作区的这个发展，是不是这样的？
是的。
Yes, Your Honor.
More than for the mine. That's what I just clarified.
不光是矿山，而且是合作区。
I'm sorry about the Minister of Commerce. I couldn't track him down. Every speech, every pamphlet, every newspaper story talks about we owe the youth jobs. Unemployment, unemployment, unemployment. And you just can't escape it. And even the opposition now, the ones who were in government for 20 years, are now trying to tell us that we have failed because we haven't managed to create 1 million jobs or whatever it is. The foreign mining companies go a certain way towards that. And they'd go a lot further if they paid their tax. Aren't you? You read my lips, I didn't say they're not paying tax. But if they were to pay more tax, it will go a very long way to indirectly creating jobs.
Through our investment, we also want to make our due contributions to the deepening of friendship between China and Zambia. And we also want to see the friendship between the people of the two countries can be deepened through our investment because we can understand each other much better through our investment here.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for organizing the lunch. We need Chinese lunch in Zambia more often. Our priorities in Zambia are jobs. Jobs and more jobs and taxation revenue.
Your Honor, we have a small request. My colleagues want to take a photo with you. We don't know whether it is permitted.
The first key to development in a country like Zambia, where you've got a serious unemployment problem and it's growing. I mean, I have to give my phone to my secretary every morning and keep it turned off at night because there's so many people wanting jobs and they think, I know, I've somehow got hold of the vice president's phone number And he owes me a job because I once organized a rally for him in some part of the country, or maybe he knows my brother, or you know, there's endless people needing jobs. Any old job will do. They're so desperate. You can tell it, you can smell it, you can feel it. If you keep your phone turned on, you hear it, you see it on the SMSs. Come in the whole time. I want a job, I want a job, I want a job.
Thank you very much. Thank you. 健康长寿.
Long life for you.
Well, you too. We might as well both enjoy. 好的，你完了，你明天就走。
La demora de los ingresos fiscales de las minas crea preocupación en algunos países donantes de que Zambia no esté ganando lo suficiente por su cobre. Economistas de la Embajada noruega han escudriñado las cifras.
Nous avions les chiffres de 2006. Alors, la valeur de l'exportation était de 3 milliards de dollars et les revenus de la Zambie étaient de 50 millions de dollars.
Un informe del Banco Mundial de 2011 declara que Zambia está perdiendo dinero en la producción de electricidad y que las tarifas pagadas solo abarcan 40% de los costos históricos. Según las empresas mineras, hay una explicación sencilla de por qué prácticamente no han pagado impuestos sobre los beneficios.
What am I saying? What I'm saying is that a number of companies had carryover tax losses. That's one. Then two, because the productive infrastructure had deteriorated, dilapidated so badly, it required huge investment to bring the production up.
Según los hallazgos noruegos, Zambia prácticamente no recibe beneficios de la extracción de cobre. En 2007, el ingreso fiscal del sector minero fue de solo 0.2% del Producto Nacional Bruto, mientras que el cobre conformó casi 71% de las exportaciones de Zambia.
En regardant ces contrats, nous nous sommes aperçus des graves anomalies. Je suis allée à Lusaka, je suis allée devant l'Assemblée nationale pour dire « c'est votre affaire, mais si vous le demandez, si vous et votre gouvernement vous le demandez, nous, communauté internationale, sous leadership norvégien, nous sommes d'accord pour financer les experts. »
El presidente de Zambia, Levi Mwanawasa, tomó el consejo y ordenó una revisión de los contratos de venta y de las leyes fiscales de Zambia.
Nous avons lancé un grand concours international pour trouver les meilleurs lobbyistes et les meilleurs experts fiscaux. Ils ont conclu que les contrats étaient léonins, qui n'avaient pas de valeur, et du coup, ils ont créé un nouveau statut fiscal pour permettre aux Zambiens de bénéficier de l'envol du prix du cuivre.
En abril de 2008, el gobierno zambio canceló las condiciones de los contratos de venta originales e introdujo un nuevo régimen fiscal.
The mining companies, it would be an understatement to say that they didn't like it. They went bananas and they threatened with international courts and the like.
They introduced the taxation levels which were going to put mining companies out of business. So it was complicated from the two sides. From the mining companies' point of view, the effective tax rate was too high. From the other stakeholders, the Zambian people, it was a welcome move because it was going to mop up a lot of money which would have been used for other development.
Todas las empresas mineras, excepto una, se negaron a aceptar la nueva legislación y retuvieron los pagos. La legislación no es el único reto. La planeación tributaria sofisticada está haciendo posible que las empresas multinacionales reduzcan sus pagos de impuestos, sacando las ganancias del país.
The
poverty phenomena is simply rife all the way across Africa and indeed the rest of the developing world. In Africa, you see a particular focus in commodity markets. Africa's natural resources are being extracted frequently without countries and citizens of those countries getting their fair share. In 2008, if Zambia had received for its copper exports the same price that Switzerland declared for its copper exports in the same quite detailed commodity categories, Zambia's GDP would have nearly doubled that year. And this is in a country where something like 80% of people are living on less than $2 a day. The impact of GDP potentially being $25 billion rather than $14 billion could have been enormous on development.
We in the Western countries have created the mechanisms by which this money flows, and it flows into our own coffers, and therefore we have as much responsibility as the poorer countries to try to curtail this phenomenon.
En muchos casos es casi imposible que los países en desarrollo escudriñen el método usado para pagar menos impuestos.
Transfer pricing is inherently complex. Now, what you find in a low-income country, as Zambia was until recently, is that the capacity within the tax authority to deal with the complexity and to deal with the army of lawyers and accountants that a multinational company has at their disposal simply isn't there. So a multinational company like Glencore is able to resource their ability to defend a particular set of prices in a way that the Zambian tax authority finds extremely difficult to respond to.
I've spent my whole career looking at this, and yes, I'm on the OECD Task Force on Tax and Development, but by and large, I find that the OECD is not interested at all in debating the broader subject. Their interest is in protecting their guidelines because OECD countries want to maintain the status quo.
El historial de problemas legales de Glencore es sorprendente. En 1983, el fundador de la empresa, Mark Rich, huyó de Estados Unidos para no ir a la cárcel. Las autoridades de Estados Unidos reaccionaron rápidamente y lo colocaron en la lista de los 10 más buscados del FBI.
He decided he didn't want to go to jail. He felt like he was above the law, and therefore he was going to do he had more money than anybody, and he was going to do everything he could to try to beat this.
Mark Rich, because of his flight from the United States, became the most wanted white-collar criminal in American history.
Suiza se negó a extraditarlo a Estados Unidos, pero se arriesgaba a ser aprendido cada vez que ponía un pie fuera de Suiza. Rich intentó una táctica diferente. Contrató al exabogado del presidente Bill Clinton en la Casa Blanca, Jack Quinn, para que le consiguiera un indulto. Su esposa, Denise Rich, fue responsable de donar más de $1 millón al Partido Democrático. También donó una cantidad que no se dio a conocer a la biblioteca presidencial de Clinton. Entre otros, el primer ministro israelí Ehud Barak y el rey de España llamaron personalmente al presidente Clinton solicitándole un indulto presidencial para Mark Rich.
I'm a Democrat. I grew up in Tennessee. I worked for Al Gore's father. Al Gore himself was an old friend. We'd gone to law school together, and I was devastated by what had happened in Bush Gore. And so one of the worst days of my life, really, was the inauguration of George Bush. And so I don't want to have anything to do with the inauguration. I'm sitting at home, and I get a call, telephone call, and it's Michael Isikoff, who's a well-known reporter, who I knew somewhat. And he says, "What'd you think about the pardon?" And I said, "What, Milken? Milken got, because the publicity is that Milken was," and he said, no, Mark Rich. And I said, I cursed, I said, "No effing way And he said, no, Mark Rich. I said, well, what about Pinky Green? He said, who's Pinky Green? I said, well, that's his partner. Did he get pardoned too? And he goes down the list. You can hear, he said, yeah, he got pardoned too. I said, good Lord.
Ivan Glasenberg se unió a la empresa cuando Mark Rich huyó a Suiza. El primer puesto de Glasenberg fue como comerciante de carbón en Johannesburgo. En esa época, la actividad principal de la empresa era proveer petróleo al régimen del apartheid en Sudáfrica. Desde su exilio en Suiza, Mark Rich ganó aproximadamente $2.000 millones estadounidenses vendiendo petróleo a Sudáfrica antes y durante el embargo de la Unión Europea. En 1991, Ivan Glasenberg había atraído la atención de Mark Rich y había sido llevado a la sede en Suiza. En los años siguientes, Ivan Glasenberg se convirtió en un miembro de confianza del círculo interno, conocido como The Rich Boys. El indulto a Mark Rich no incluía a la empresa.
The companies pled guilty, and it was signed, sealed, and delivered. And when we were in court, when this happened, it was like a closing, because the way in which the monies were paid included Mark Rich selling his interest in 20th Century Fox and some oil wells and stuff, which generated cash that was then delivered to us to satisfy the $200 million.
Un año después de su escape, la empresa Mark Rich & Co. se declaró culpable de fraude fiscal.
They did act like, from day one, that they were above the law. Every time I turned around, his company and people for his company were cheating and were breaking the law, whether it was doing a midnight sale that was bogus or trying to secrete documents out of the United States or cheating on taxes or making up phony deals to launder money out of the United States or doing deals with the Iranians when they were prohibited. Whatever it was, he was cheating.
En 1994, Mark Rich dejó el cargo de director general y vendió sus acciones a la gerencia. La empresa fue renombrada como Glencore. En 2004, Ivan Glasenberg asumió el cargo. Actualmente, el presidente de la empresa, Simon Murray, asegura que Glencore no está envuelta en actividades ilegales.
Our position on the issues of bribery and corruption is clear. Offering, paying, authorizing, soliciting or accepting bribes is totally unacceptable to Glencore.
En la época en que Simon Murray hizo esas afirmaciones frente a los accionistas, la sección de granos de Glencore y 2 de sus empleados enfrentaban un juicio en un tribunal belga, acusados de sobornar a un funcionario de la Unión Europea.
Please don't feel. Everything is presumed innocent. We don't lie.
Durante 2 años, Glencore le dio al funcionario de la Unión Europea, Karel Bros, dinero, viajes y teléfono gratis. Todo esto a cambio de información interna. Información que Glencore usó para asegurar los reembolsos de las exportaciones de la Unión Europea. Un arreglo lucrativo que hizo ganar millones a Glencore. El 27 de junio de 2012, la sección de granos de Glencore fue declarada culpable y se le impuso una multa de 500,000 euros. Glencore apeló y se niega a hacer comentarios.
Glencore has full oversight of its tax practices and fully adheres to all its tax obligations in line with the laws in the countries and the territories in which we operate.
Un informe confidencial filtrado en enero de 2011 plantea serias interrogantes respecto a las prácticas tributarias de Glencore en Zambia. El informe contiene los resultados de una inspección fiscal exhaustiva de la filial Zambia de Glencore, Mopani Copper Mines.
Here it is. I got a brown envelope in my email, it's here. And it was a very simple envelope, nothing specified on it, just my address. Inside there was a pilot audit of the Mopani copper mine.
Who sent it to you?
I don't know.
You don't know who sent it to you?
No, I don't know because I think that it wasn't meant to be public.
Financiada por un grupo de países donantes encabezados por Noruega, Zambia contrató a la firma internacional Grant Thornton para que llevara a cabo la auditoría.
Pas simplement la sous-facturation ou la manipulation des résultats, il y avait aussi le fait que des pans entiers qui auraient dû figurer dans les chiffres d'affaires étaient complètement occultés.
El propósito de la auditoría era establecer si los pagos de impuestos de Mopani de 2006 y 2007 habían sido correctos. Los auditores encontraron fuertes indicadores de precios de transferencia y notaron que los precios parecían haber sido determinados por la empresa matriz, la compradora. Los auditores determinaron que esto no estaba de acuerdo con el principio de negociación en condiciones de igualdad. En otras palabras, Glencore, Suiza, parecía haber estado manipulando los precios del cobre y, como resultado, había reducido su factura de impuestos en Zambia.
That situation is not correct. We deal with Glencore at arm's length, and we are paid at prices that relate to the London Metal Exchange.
Con base en los hallazgos, los auditores llegaron a la conclusión de que Glencore había comerciado con su filial, violando el principio de las condiciones de igualdad de la OCDE y de que esto tendría un impacto en las evaluaciones fiscales del período que estaba bajo revisión.
It was a report that contained issues that were not factual. That report was a desktop report. It had a fundamental flaw in the sense that the auditors did not familiarize themselves with the chain of production.
Según los auditores, Mopani se había resistido a la auditoría en cada etapa y no parecían preocuparle las sanciones que pudiera haber.
If a similar audit report had been carried out for the tax authority in the UK, for example, then I think you would very quickly have seen, as a first step, I think you would have seen a threat of proceedings simply on the grounds of non-cooperation, even before we start looking at the potential for redress, given the apparent scale of distortion in the way that the mine has been operated.
Después de que se filtrara el informe, el Banco de Inversiones de la Unión Europea suspendió cualquier préstamo a Glencore. En Zambia, el ministro de Finanzas exigió a la empresa pagar lo que debía, pero Glencore se negó. Una organización de caridad zambia reportó a Glencore con la OCDE.
Under the OECD, there is a complaints mechanism where you can actually file a complaint against a company for violating tax-related guidelines, which we did.
So what has come out of that?
Nothing, because Glencore refused, and the OECD said they can't do anything if one party does not want to cooperate.
Estuvimos 6 meses tratando de entrevistar a Ivan Glasenberg, pero se negó. En una respuesta por escrito a la auditoría, Glencore rechaza todos los hallazgos. El asunto no se ha resuelto.
You don't have crack squads of auditors and accountants and computer operators and people who can parachute in and open a safe and fly back again and give us the information about who's hiding what. So you're just trying to do the best you can do, and that's what we're doing, and I hope we get better at it. I can't jump out of this chair, run through the door, grab my AK-47 from my shelf and accost the nearest miner. You know, it just takes a bit of time. may take more time than people are prepared to tolerate.
Zambia vendió su cobre en el peor momento posible bajo términos que hicieron difícil que el país sacara provecho de su propia riqueza natural. Actualmente, el gobierno trabaja para aumentar los ingresos fiscales de las minas, ingresos demasiado necesarios para pagar escuelas y atención médica y para reducir la pobreza. La divulgación del informe de la auditoría no afectó al mercado. En mayo de 2011, Glencore ganó más de $10,000 millones estadounidenses, lo que la convirtió en la mayor oferta pública de venta en ese año. Entre los compradores estaban la Iglesia de Inglaterra y el gobierno noruego, a través de su fondo petrolero.
It has been a very exciting period for the group. It saw the successful IPO, offering the largest ever IPO on the premium segment of the London Stock Exchange and the first ever simultaneous London primary and Hong Kong secondary IPO.
Ivan Glasenberg ganó $8,800 millones estadounidenses con la oferta pública de venta. Otros 400 empleados de Glencore ganaron más de $100 millones cada uno. A fines de 2012, el ex primer ministro británico Tony Blair fue a ayudar a negociar una fusión de $80,000 millones entre Glencore y la enorme empresa minera Xstrata. Si tiene éxito, la fusión casi duplicará el tamaño de la empresa y su influencia en el mundo. Narrado en español por José Luis Palomera de la Re, con la colaboración de Liliana Torres y América Nieves.